follow on, I'll say just a few words about the issue which has a supporting role in what we say, and that's the need for a better framework of select committee powers generally. In the title of our report, as you see, we ask the question, clarity or confusion? And our answer, as we've heard, is that the current system of select committee powers is confusing, and that we say a compelling case can be made for greater clarity. I'm going to tell you about 5 things that we discovered while we were researching and writing our report. And as this report is all about power, the powers of select committees, and the balance of power between Parliament and the courts, I thought that it might be helpful if I took that word and used it as a mnemonic to go through and help me explain these 5 things that we discovered when writing our report. So we begin with P, and P stands in our report for puzzling. There are fundamental aspects, we think, of select committee powers which are unclear. And the prime example is one which Richard has touched on. This is the one we see in the standing orders, the power to send the person's people's records. But this is puzzling because it's not clear what power to send for actually means. Does it mean to invite a witness to attend? Does it mean to order a witness to attend? And more fundamentally, what happens if the witness doesn't attend? And this power says nothing about that. An alternative approach would therefore be to have more concrete rules, which set out in clear terms actually what a select committee must do or what it can do and in what circumstances. So that's P. Moving on through power, we come to O, and O is for omissions. And what I mean by this is that there are some important topics which simply don't appear in the rules at all. One example of this, which we set out in the report, is that there are no rules in the standing orders addressing the problems that would be caused if a member of the government, a member of the executive, was to be on a select committee. For example, a member promoted to the front bench. And the problem is this would cause a conflict of interest in the context of what select committees are doing holding the executive to account. But we do know that Parliament has a view on this. It doesn't generally happen. And there's a convention that ministers, opposition, front bench, spokesmen and party groups don't normally serve on select committees. We say conventions are fine when everyone agrees, but there isn't always agreement. Would Parliament not prefer to have a framework of rules on these and other issues which could be applied when necessary? W is for where. Where do you have to look to find out what the rules are on a particular point relating to select committees? We found out during the course of our research that there are many different sources, but we had to look to try and establish what the powers of select committees are. So we have the standing orders for the House of Commons and the House of Lords with amendments that are made from time to time. In the House of Lords we have a companion to the standing orders and a guide to the proceedings of the House of Lords. We have a guide for witnesses to House of Commons select committees, Erskine May, resolutions of the House of Commons, motions of the House of Lords, and as a testament to the difficulty, I think, for anybody looking into this area, we found we were still finding further sources, even once our report had gone to press, notably the House of Commons Guide for Select Committee Members, which is another document that we need to look at. And we suggest that there might just be another way. Would it not be a good idea to have a set of rules for select committees in one accessible place? So moving on, E is for errors. We discovered during the course of our research that there are some assertions in these various sources that I've mentioned which we think can be seriously called into question. Perhaps the best example to give is the point often made that witnesses are bound to answer any question put to them in the select committee, even if there would be a risk of self-incrimination or a breach of confidentiality, and there are other examples that could be given while a witness may think that it would be perfectly proper of them not to answer the question. We seriously doubt whether witnesses are in fact bound to answer questions in any situation. And it's apparent from what Richard said, of course, that it's not even clear what bound actually means in this context, where we say there are no enforcement powers which can realistically be exercised where guidance does exist, we say some of it is misleading. So coming to the end of power, R is for resolution. We recognise that it's inevitable that in any system of rules there are going to be disputes. But a problem we've identified is that there's no established mechanism for resolving disputes that arise in relation to select committee powers in any kind of formal way, which might be needed when significant disputes arise. As part of our research, we looked at a little bit of what happens in other countries. And New Zealand has a system which shows, in some ways, how things could potentially be done differently. In New Zealand, their standing orders do seem to have considered what problems may arise and how they should be resolved. For example, if a witness refuses to answer a question, what should happen in that situation? And there they also have speakers' rulings published online, collected in relation to the subject matter of the ruling, including select committees. So we started asking ourselves how this could be achieved here, because we know, of course, the speaker gives rulings on points of order. But it wasn't until we started looking into this in detail that we found the detail on this point tucked away in Notice of May that the speaker isn't allowed to give rulings on points related to select committees. So that doesn't seem to be a solution which could immediately be brought in. But this did confirm to us that there's a clear need for Parliament to think about what should happen when disputes arise and whether it wants to put in place any mechanism for having those resolved. So those are just some of the problems we identified, suggesting to us that a clear case can be made for a better framework of powers. But before I finish, I recognise that I do need to ask, because you may be wondering, why does this matter? Well, we acknowledge that select committees can operate very effectively without the need to consider their formal powers. But as Richard has said, sometimes, and in some important cases, their formal powers will matter. We also acknowledge that Parliament may see the advantage in unwritten powers, which by very definition are flexible and capable of evolution. We recognise that. But we also suggest that Parliament may see advantages in a clearer framework. We can identify 5 potential advantages which it may see. Sorry, I've got hung up there on 5 things, 3 potential advantages. First, a clearer framework may matter if Parliament wants its procedures to be clear and accessible. We recognise this is a matter for Parliament to weigh up its competing considerations. Secondly, a clearer framework may matter if Parliament wants to maximise the efficiency, the effectiveness and the legitimacy of select committees. And thirdly, and this is where we return to the issues which Richard outlined, a clearer framework may matter if enforcement powers are introduced, because a clearer framework may give Parliament a better chance of avoiding greater scrutiny from the courts, which is